Hello, everyone. Welcome to the maiden PhD application seminar with focus on basic medical sciences for doctors. My name is Osabutey, and then I'm a PhD student at the University of Rochester, studying neuroscience, and I'm a product of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, SMD class of 2018. And then with me is Nicholas, Nicholas, you can introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. My name is Nicholas Adzibolosu. I also went to KUST School of Medicine and Dentistry, and I completed in 2016. I'm currently pursuing my PhD in physiology with concentration in the reproductive sciences and a minor in bioinformatics at Wayne State University School of Medicine. It's a pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you. So for today, the target audience for our seminar is house officers, medical officers, and then specialists who intend to go into PhD studies. We, however, want to start by emphasizing that after medical school, we are spoiled for choice. After medical school, we are spoiled for choice when it comes to the myriad pathways that we can take. We know that we can either do a PhD, a master's, or go straight into residency or do pre-residency fellowship before we start. However, the focus of our presentation today will be on the PhD pathway. And it is important to note that the PhD pathway does not just lead to academia. The PhD pathway can also lead you to industry or entrepreneurship. So I want to take the chance to go through some people we might know who have gone through this PhD pathway. An example is Professor Richard Phillips, the scientific director for KCCR. He did his medical training in Ghana, and then before moving on to do his PhD in the United Kingdom. Another example is Professor Chiri Agbenyega, who is a professor of physiology at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, a former dean of the School of Medicine. And so he also did his PhD in UK after medical school in Ghana. Another example that we can use of someone who completed in Ghana and went on to do a PhD and is in clinical work now is Professor Lewis Roberts. He's a professor of medicine at Mayo Clinic. He is a product of the University of Ghana Medical School. He did his PhD in, I think, physiology and biophysics before going to do residency, and is now both practicing and in academia. I can also cite the example of Professor Rexford Ahima, who is also a professor of medicine at Johns Hopkins University. He's a product of the University of Ghana Medical School, went to do his PhD in the United States. I can also cite another example, Dr. George Che, Professor George Che, who is at the Washington University at St. Louis, He is a product of the University of Ghana Medical School, went to do his PhD in infectious diseases before doing his residency, and is now a professor. I think he's also the director of research for the University of Ghana Medical Center. So there are lots of people to draw inspiration from when it comes to the PhD pathway. I can also cite Dr. Evelyn Giage, who is an assistant professor in the Hereford Systems in Michigan. She finished med school, did her residency training in Ghana before coming to do a PhD here in cancer biology. I can also finally cite someone who, after med school, went through the PhD and then is now in industry. Dr. Justice Boakye-Appiah, after his medical school, he did his PhD in the UK, and then after that, he joined Pfizer as an associate director in the vaccine department. So we can see that there's so much inspiration to draw from. However, it is important to throw light on the duration of PhD programs across the world so that one is informed before going headlong into the process of applying for PhD programs. So for today's seminar, the countries that we will focus on are Canada, the United States, United Kingdom. However, I believe that some of the information that will be shared in this seminar might be useful for other countries as well. And so don't worry if your country of interest is not on this list. There are gems that you can use for other countries that come to mind. So for when it comes to PhD areas, we are spoiled for choice as to which area to go. And based on this list, you can see that there are so many ways that a doctor can go when it comes to the choice of a PhD program. However, from the get-go, it is important to know which area you are very much interested in and tailor your applications. Let your application be as specific as possible so that things become easier for you in the application process. So back in the day, we used to think that it's only the anatomy, biochemistry, physiology that a lot of people can go into. However, you can see from the list that there are so many areas, and it would be nice to spend time going through the area that is most important to you. So a common question that most people pose is that is a master's degree required for PhD admission? So I've taken time to look through the best 3 programs in each school and their requirement for admission into their PhD program. Harvard, University of California, San Francisco, and MIT for the United States. And we can see that throughout, their focus is mainly on the bachelor's degree, undergraduate coursework. We can see the same for Canadian schools as well. The University of Toronto, McGill University, and also University of British Columbia. We can see that the minimum they want is a bachelor's. However, it's important, we can see from what they state that a master's may not be required. However, it boosts your chances of getting in. So if you have a master's, it's a plus for you in that it will be quite easier for you to enter into PhD programs of your choice. With the United Kingdom as well, we can see that I chose Oxford, Cambridge, and then University College London, and all their requirements are an undergraduate degree. I chose the best three in neuroscience because of my neuroscience bias. However, I see that it cuts across most of the other programs that you will search for in the United Kingdom. So this is the season that most people want to start application. We want to entreat everyone to search through each program of choice. After you get your PhD area that you are interested in, search online for schools that are really good, search for top tier programs. When it comes to the program strength, search for top tier and then middle tier programs, make a list of them, take note of the deadlines that each school has, and then the application requirements, and also make sure to take a look at the funding information for every school. The funding package for each school might differ. So it would be nice to, during that time, look through the funding packages of each school and then be sure that you are comfortable with such packages. And then the research area of each program. Not every 2 PhD programs are the same, because sometimes PhD programs might be in neuroscience, however, their concentrations might be different. So it will be important to take a look at those. And then the earlier you search on websites, you can see that some of them organize information sessions. They may advertise those on their application websites so that you attend those sessions and they can give you application fee waivers. So it is important to note the timeline of most PhD applications. Some schools have already opened application this month. However, starting September, most schools will open application for their PhD programs. By November, December, most schools have their application deadlines in November, December. The earlier you apply for some of them, the better, because there are opportunities that you have within those periods. And this is the period that you can start reaching out to professors, reaching out to those you want to write recommendation letters for you, get everything done in time. Some schools start, after the application deadline, some schools start calling for interviews from December to February. And then by February, a lot of schools close their interview season. And in March, they send out decisions, whether you are admitted, whether you are waitlisted, or sometimes the rejection letters come out around this time. And then by August 2023, that's next year, most schools would have begun. It is important to note that for this timeline may vary from school to school. So it will be nice to look through the program website and be sure of the timelines and then work accordingly. So delving into application fees for PhD programs. Some of the schools have really low application fee, others have very high application fee. However, it's important to note that you can get application fee waivers for each program, depending on what route you use. If you apply early, you'll be able to, some schools give you an application fee waiver. The University of Rochester, where I am, does that. They waive all applications that they receive into November. And then I think as far as December, 1st December. And then I know University of Colorado and Shoots Medical Campus also does the same. You can also fill application form, the application fee waiver form on the website of the school that you are interested in. Some of them, I know I did that for Harvard University. There's a form on the website that you can fill to request for a waiver, application fee waiver. And then you can also email the program coordinator of each school. If there's not much information about fee waivers, you can reach out to the program coordinators. They can give you much information on how to request for application fee waiver. Sometimes, so one of the best things to do is to attend information sessions, because during those sessions, they give you every information that you need. Sometimes they give you tips on how to write your statement of purpose, how to write other things, and then tell you how to request for application waivers. Some even share codes during these sessions. So I'll hand over to Nicholas to take the rest of the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'll just admit these people in. Okay, so having heard all of that from Mark, all that important information from Mark, I want to start by saying that, well, Mark clearly pointed out that as doctors, there are so many pathways that we can take to become full-time clinicians or clinician scientists or basic scientists. And it's important that you do a soul searching to be sure exactly what you want to do, because the journey of applying for PhD programs in the basic sciences can be filled with both happy and sad moments. And so you need to be highly motivated and be ready to put in the necessary work to get admission into these PhD programs. It's not to discourage you, but to inform you ahead of time that it can be challenging, but at the same time, it can be very rewarding as well. And you should know that you have so many options, and you shouldn't consider doing a PhD as an escape route or to escape from clinical practice. So when you finish your soul searching and you are certain that you want to take this route, there are a number of things you need to have ready before you put in your applications. We've listed them in 4 groups here. First, you need your academic transcripts from your university, and then you also need to write a statement of purpose. Most PhD programs will require that you write a statement of purpose. Then you need to have your curriculum vitae or your CV, and then you will need to get recommendation letters, as well as the possibility of having to take some tests. Not all schools require you to take exams and provide test results. So we'll take them one after the other and see what entails or what advice we have to offer. So with regards to your academic transcripts, it's important that you request these from your universities early, because there can be some delays and you wouldn't want to miss an admission deadline because you didn't get your transcript sent to you or to your university early. Depending on the university you are applying to, you may be required to have your transcripts converted into or to be officially evaluated by an independent body such as the World Education Services or other organizations like the ECE and so forth. If your interest is in applying to PhD programs in the United States, it will be very good to convert your GPA or whichever form that your grade comes in into the 4.0 GPA scale, which is what the American system, which is what the universities in the United States recognize. To share some personal experience, in one of my application, one of my PhD applications, I sent my transcripts to a professor to express interest in working in their lab, and they had a look at the percentages that were given on my transcript, and they felt that those grades don't look so good simply because we have different grading systems. So it's important that if you have a grading system that is different from the 4.0 scale, you convert it to the 4.0 scale, and in your applications and your emails to prospective supervisors, you have an equivalent to share with them so that they can assess you objectively. And one of the tools that help you to do that freely is the WES IGPA calculator. It's a freely available tool online. If you just Google WES IGPA calculator, they will take you to the link to the web page, and you can easily convert your final grade, or you can do it course by course, or you can just convert your final CWA into the 4.0 scale. Next is the statement of purpose. The statement of purpose provides you the opportunity to sell yourself as the best candidate for the position, because in as much as you are choosing between schools, you choose to apply to the schools that you consider as the very best. They are also looking for the best candidates who would thrive in their academic environment. And so it's important that you use the statement of purpose to put yourself out there and let them know that the qualities you have, the qualifications you have, and the skills you have make you the best candidate for the PhD program. And it's always good to start writing early, just like any other academic writing. It's good to start writing early. If you feel any hindrances in the initial stages, that is okay, that's normal, but then try as much as possible to start writing early. And then with time, you don't need to have the full statement ready in one sitting. You start one step at a time. You write a paragraph, then a page, and then you revise it over and over again. Initially, you can put down as much information as you want to write about yourself, and then with time, you can remove the things that you deem unnecessary or that do not flow well with the story you want to tell. And for us as clinicians, we are at an advantage because we have the privilege of encountering patients who suffer from the disease conditions that most of these PhD programs do research to try to find solutions to. So if you are able to state in your essays how your motivation to want to pursue this research program was derived from your encounters with patients who had these disease conditions on a daily basis, or however often you meet them, they will deem your application much stronger than someone who is just talking from a more theoretical point of view. And when writing your statements, it's important that you pay attention to the requirements that are stated by the university or the specific program. I know it's very tempting to write one general statement and use it for multiple applications, but it's always worth it to pay attention to the specific requirements for each program and customize the statement to fit the specific requirements. You can write a very good statement, but just for errors in font style or spacing, the programs can use that to drop you. Be mindful of the fact that there are so many people applying for these programs from all over the world. So you want to limit errors, or you want to try not to give them reason to reject you. Next is the curriculum vitae or CV. Most PhD programs would most academic positions in general will require that you provide a detailed curriculum vitae rather than a summary resume. And you should be mindful of the program you're applying to. If you're applying for a program that emphasizes on clinical research, you should fashion your CV so that it highlights your clinical skills, your clinical research skills. If you're applying for a program that would, for instance, involve performing surgical operations on a sheep model of ovarian cancer, or a sheep model of pregnancy, for instance, to study perhaps the effects of impaired uterine blood flow to the developing fetus or things like that, then it will be important to highlight that you have surgical skills in the clinic. And so when they read that, they would see that, okay, this is an advantage you have over someone who probably didn't have a lot of opportunity to do surgical procedures. So you should always customize everything to fit the program you're applying for. And whilst you are doing that, you should try as much as possible to align your CV, the timeline on your CV, with the things you describe in your statements of purpose. There are a number of tools that can help you draft a very good CV. Here we show just two of them. One is an app that you can install on your phone, and it's the Intelligent CV app. You could also use the web platform Resume Now, and they have templates of CVs based on the whether you're applying for an education program or you want to apply for a job. In addition to the statements of purpose and the CV that you are trying to use to sell yourself to the programs, you should know that some programs would also pay attention to your profile, your public profile. So you should have a clear and relevant profile on LinkedIn and Twitter especially, but also Facebook and Instagram. A number of professors who are interested in hiring students into their labs can easily search for to do a background check on the student to be sure that they are admitting the right person into the program. So it's important that you have an updated profile on these social media platforms. The other very important component of your application is recommendation letters that you need to get from, for PhDs, mostly professors who have taught you in medical school, but also some schools may accept a recommendation. Some schools may accept a recommendation letter from, a work supervisor. So the important things that need to go into the recommendation letter, first, the recommender needs to begin by stating the intention of the letter, that they are writing this to highly recommend you for the PhD program. And then they follow that by introducing themselves and giving their qualifications. And then they talk about in what capacity they have known you and for how long. Then they now focus a lot on you, the things that make them believe that you would be successful in the PhD program, and they should be as specific as possible. General statements like so and so is a very intelligent or very resourceful medical doctor would not be sufficient. They need to give specific examples. For instance, there was a situation at the hospital when they didn't have the equipment to do a certain procedure, and you were able to use the basic resources available to you to achieve excellent results, that will demonstrate to the admissions committee that you are resourceful, rather than them just stating that you are a resourceful person. And then they need to conclude by, again, expressing confidence that they know, having worked with you or having taught you, they know you have the qualities that it takes. And it will also be a good idea if you get professors who have themselves done PhDs in the basic sciences. And so if such a person recommends you, the admission committee would look at that and understand that this person knows what is required for a PhD. And if they express confidence in you, then you must be really good. And they should also end by providing, by stating that they are willing to provide any further assistance or any further information that they may require to deem your application favorable. So the additional things are that you should, because getting recommendation letters can be challenging, it can require a lot of time commitment. It's important that you inform your recommenders ahead of time, several weeks ahead of time. Do not wait until a few days to the deadline before you contact your recommender and put stress on them. Inform them ahead of time, even before you begin your application process. And you should send them your CV, if necessary, your academic transcripts. And you don't necessarily have to send to choose recommenders based on people who know you personally, even though that would those people would probably be able to write a more compelling letter for you. But even if you contact just a professor who has taught you before, and you send them your CV and your transcripts, they should have the necessary information to write a good letter for you. And because you would need to be constantly following up with the recommender, it will be good to choose someone that you would feel comfortable reminding at least every week about the letters. If you choose a very busy professor who is a vice chancellor and has to attend so many programs, that would probably not be a very good thing to do. And you should also bear in mind that the letters would need to be written on an official letterhead, or at least the recommender would need to have institutional email addresses. Now, I have been talking about recommendation letters all this while. It's important to note that not many schools will ask you, the applicant, to submit the recommendation letter directly. A lot of them would ask for your recommender's email address on the application form, and the university will contact the recommender directly for the letter. Or they may just send the recommender a form to fill. So it's important to pay attention to the specific requirements for the program or the school you're applying to. Let's admit. So the final thing we want to touch on is the test scores. A number of schools require that you take an English proficiency exam. The most common ones are the International English Language Testing Systems, or IELTS, or the test of English as a foreign language, or TOEFL. The good news is many schools are now recognizing universities in Ghana, in Nigeria, and some other Anglophone countries as having they are recognizing applicants who obtain their college degrees from these countries as having the necessary English proficiency required to succeed in their PhD program. So they provide waivers for these. Even if they do not state that those countries are waived, the requirement is waived for those countries, you can always email the program coordinator and show and inform them that you went to the school, and you can, before you even do that, you can obtain an English proficiency letter like shown on the right hand side here from your university, and then send that to, attach that to the email you send to the course coordinator and ask for a waiver of the English proficiency requirement. However, if they insist that you have to take it, you should know that IELTS, both IELTS and TOEFL costs around the same, about $235 US. The other major exam that several schools can request for is the GRE, which is essentially an aptitude test. And again, many schools in the many programs in the biomedical sciences are waiving this requirement. And so you wouldn't have to worry so much about that. I should have mentioned that in addition to getting an English proficiency letter from your university, you could also take a Duolingo English test, which is a free assessment that you can take, and you get an immediate result that you can send to along with your letter to the school. But not many schools will recognize this. The final part of this, the final thing we want to touch on is that while many schools do not, especially in the United States, do not require that you have a professor who would have agreed to supervise you before they admit you, it's very good if you have a professor in the program willing to vouch for you that if you do get admitted into the program, they will let you have a rotation, a research rotation in their lab, and possibly do your thesis work in their lab. And so it's crucial that you identify 2 or 3 professors in the program that you're applying to, and you send emails to these professors and express your interest in working with them. In some cases, you could be fortunate, which is something I experienced personally. You could be fortunate to be in touch with a professor who might be in charge of a funding program in the university. And so by the mere fact that you expressed interest in working with them, even if you are not eligible to obtain the regular funding for the PhD program, they may be able to pull some extra resources and give you the funding you require to have a fully admission into a fully funded PhD program. And in contacting the professors, you should send an email that the first step would be to identify the professors and then read a couple of their research papers and get yourself familiar with the work that they do. Next, when you send your email, introduce yourself to them, talk about your educational background and any research background that you have. And you need to express specific interest in the research projects that they do. And you should mention realistic things. Do not say something like you have been interested in doing the research that they do since you were in your mother's womb. You should mention very realistic things, and you should be specific, mention something specific about the project that they do, or about a technique that they use in their lab that you are interested in exploring. And it's what would even make it even better would be if you are able to come up with a very good question about, or a very good suggestion about a next research that you think they could do or they could explore. You could ask if they have considered doing something like that, or if you find an alternative approach that you think they could have used in their research. So to conclude, Mark did a very good job in drafting a sample email that you can send to a professor. And if you are able to write something that reads like this, I'm very sure you would get good replies, and you would see professors who would be willing to support your application. So the subject line should be very specific, something like you're a prospective PhD student, and you should be reasonably formal. Do not say hi, so and so, just dear professor, then you mention the last name of the professor, and then you begin by going straight to the point and expressing your interest in doing the research that he does in the respective PhD program that you're applying for, and mention the name of the university. And then you mention what got you interested in his research. You be specific that you read this paper and you found either the results interesting or the approach interesting, and then you can bring your suggestion. Then you introduce yourself, give your background, your qualifications, any research experience that you have, and then you attach the necessary documents that would make them interested in wanting to hear from you. And then you send that to them, and then you pray for good news. So that brings us to the first part, where we talk about the necessary things that we think you need to be aware of as you prepare for your PhD applications. I think we will end here and open the floor for any specific questions that you may have, and we'll try to answer them as best as we can.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Yes, and if you have questions, you can just unmute yourself and then ask, or you can send the questions through the chat, and we will try as much as possible to give you a response tailored to your situation. Thank you.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, so this is Delali, Dr. Osabutey. I think great presentation there, Dr. Nicholas, amazing one. So I have a question. I don't know whether I can go ahead.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so what if you email a professor, okay, on your interest and all that, and you don't get a reply? How long should you wait, and should you go ahead with the application? So that's my question.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for the question.
Mark, do you want to take that?
Yes, I can take that. So for the response, when it comes to response from professors, when you send the email, when they do not reply, it might mean different things. Sometimes professors are overwhelmed with so many emails every day. So it is possible that you send the email and then it's at the bottom of their inbox and they may not be able to see that. Another time, so sometimes too, what can happen is that they read your email, wanted to reply, but forgot to reply. That's a possibility. Sometimes too, some do not reply because they think there is not a match between your interest and their interest. Some may not reply. However, it is important not to take those personal. don't take that personal. If they do not reply, you can wait a few days and then send a follow-up email. So for me, I used to wait like 2 or 3 days and then send them a follow-up email, letting them know that I previously sent an email requesting for this and that. I would love to get more information or advice from them. Some actually reply. And even if they do not reply, you can apply anyway. There's one school that all the professors I sent an email did not reply. However, I got admission. So don't take it personal when they don't reply. Just go ahead and then apply. You might get in. Thank you.
Okay, so sorry, HB, was your question answered, or did you want to ask a follow-up? No. Okay. Right. So there's a question. There's one question in the chat. I think Richard wants to know how possible it is to practice in the USA as a doctor, as well as in academia, following a successful PhD program. So I can answer that. The straightforward answer is it's very possible to do that. A number of the physician scientists that Mark showed earlier, they all did the PhD. A number of them did the PhD program first in the United States, and then followed through with doing a residency. So many PhD programs in the United States, in the first 2 years, you are usually required to do some coursework, and depending on the program, the coursework can actually prepare you to some extent towards the step 1 of the USMLE exam, because for the basic medical sciences, you would learn things related to cell biology, immunology, microbiology, physiology, anatomy. And so if you are able to plan or schedule your time very well, you can study for the USMLE steps 1 and 2 and take them even before you complete your residency, your PhD program. And when you do finish your PhD program, that actually puts you on a higher pedestal than compared to someone who has no PhD, especially if the residency program you're applying to is one that requires or one that considers doing research favorably. So it's very possible to finish a PhD and then go into residency. In the PhD program, you even get the opportunity to do clinical shadowing. If you do want that, you can speak with some clinicians and shadow them. And when it's time for you to apply for residency, you can get very good recommendation letters from them. And yeah, so I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Okay. There's a question in the chat. Where test scores are optional, especially GRE, would you recommend that a candidate still write or not?
So for me, I wrote the GRE. I wrote it because at the time I was applying, I did not know that there were so many schools that considered having a GRE to be only optional. The schools I was interested in all required the GRE. If it is optional, there's no straightforward answer to this, because depending on the school, they may still consider it. They may consider your score if you get very good scores, if you score very good marks. Some schools make it better by removing the requirements of GRE altogether. If you can write it and you are confident that you can get a very good score, by very good score, I mean at least a total score of the quantitative and the verbal reasoning sessions to be at least 300. If you can get above 315, that's perfect. Then you should write that and you add that to your application. And if you have the necessary funds to write it, because it costs about a little over $200 US. So if you can, if getting very good scores and then paying that amount of money is not a problem for you, then you should write it if it's optional and add it to your application. It will boost your application. But if it's optional and you feel you are not ready to spend that amount of money, or you are not, you feel it's been a long time you did anything related to math, and then you would have to weigh the options and then reconsider. And I don't think you really need a GRE to be competitive, because Mark did not take the GRE and he still got into University of Rochester, which is big. So yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I didn't take the English proficiency test. I didn't write a GRE. However, I was able to get in. I had the certificate of English proficiency from the English department of KNUST, which I presented to each of my schools, and they waived the English language requirement for me. And for the GRE, like Nicholas said, for some schools, they don't look at GRE at all. Others, it is optional. And if you have a high score, just apply. Yeah, just use it. There's another question. Is it compulsory to do the WES evaluation?
Yeah, so the answer to that is, it depends on the school. For my university, Wayne State University, it is compulsory to do the WES evaluation after you are admitted. At the time you apply, you just use your unofficial transcript that you obtain from your university. After you gain admission, then you have to do the WES evaluation. Other schools don't require WES evaluation at all. Yeah, so it's important to pay attention to this. And there were other schools I applied to and had admission from, and they did not need a WES evaluation of my transcripts.
So someone is asking, is there a hierarchy to the requirements?
I would say that yes. So yes and no. Yes, generally, as a rule of thumb, your academic transcript is considered by many schools to be the most important, because it gives a reflection of your performance over a longer period of time, rather than something like a test score where you can just, it's just a cross-section of how good you are, or yeah. And so the academic transcript is considered generally as the most important, followed by the statement of purpose and the details on your CV, as well as the recommendation letters. However, there's no hard and fast rule about it. There are people who would get very high GPAs, like 3.8 out of 4.0. Most schools will say a minimum GPA of 3.0 is what they need. Someone can get a GPA of 3.8 out of 4, which is a very good first class, and yet they won't get admission simply because they did not write a compelling statement, or their recommendation letters were not strong enough, or their curriculum vitae were not well structured. So while there may be a general hierarchy, someone with an average GPA, but with very strong letters, can still get into a very, very good school, and vice versa. Mark, you may want to add.
Yes, you actually highlighted the parts that I wanted to touch on. Sometimes what holds us back is that, oh, my transcripts may not be good enough. However, I would want you to just psych yourself. If you really want this, don't worry so much about your GPA. In your personal statement, you can give points that highlight aspects of your maybe education or your research background or some attributes you have that you think overshadow that poor GPA in your perspective. And also in your CV, add extra stuff that you have done, which can show them that you are a really good candidate for their program. And other times to the recommendation letter, let people who really know you and are very ready to write the recommendation for you highlight those other aspects of you. So that is why in this situation, it would be nice to add your personal statement when you are writing to your professor to request a recommendation letter, so that they also get to see where you come from, the challenges you faced, how you overcame them in spite of your GPA. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. And in addition to what you said about highlighting your strengths in your personal statement, if, you know, as human beings, some life events can occur and that can affect our academic performance. And so your personal statement gives you the opportunity to talk about those. If there was an adverse event that occurred and could have contributed to your academic performance being below your potential or your capacity, you should mention those in your personal statement as well, so that they know why your GPA does not reflect your potential.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Yeah, Louisa is asking a question. She said, thanks a lot. What exactly does funding for a PhD entail? Is it for the application processes or stipends when in the program? Can you elaborate, please?
Okay, so I can start. Traditionally, the funding for PhD programs is the payment of your tuition and student services fees, as well as the stipend that they give you. And most basic medical science PhD programs in the United States, I think in Canada, have funding sort of guaranteed for the students that they admit. So once they admit you, it's very likely they will provide funding for these. So those are the basic things: the tuition, your student service fees, and the stipend. That's what the funding generally covers. But some schools would provide some additional benefits, like the application fee waiver that we talked about. And some would, when you do something like a WES evaluation of your transcript, when you do gain admission into the program, they may refund the cost of all of that to you. Wayne State University did that for us. You pay for these evaluations out of pocket, and then afterwards the university refunds. Some schools may have some hardship funds from which they can take money and give you for cost, or to cut down the cost of your flight or settling into the program. So the one that's common to all of them is tuition, stipend, and fees. But then other schools have some additional benefits. And this is not limited to the United States alone. In Australia, New Zealand, UK, Canada, they all have different forms of funding available. Thank you.
I think HP has his hand raised. I think he wants to ask.
Yeah, hello. So so I'm back again. Thanks for this. So I wanted to know, what kinds of schools should we look out for when browsing the web for possible schools to apply to? Because I think a friend advised me on looking out for state schools because they may have funding. But fortunately for you two, your schools are not state schools, but you are actually funded. So I don't know how, which schools are the best for us, private schools, public schools, which should we go for? Thank you.
That's a good question. So for schools that to apply to, sometimes it's just nice to just do a Google search. So for example, your interest is in cancer biology. You go to Google, type PhD cancer biology USA. Then you take a look at the search results. When the search results come, you can just go through the schools, familiarize yourself with the details on the school website. And then you can also look at, when you have a list of schools that you are drawn to, you can use US News rankings or university rankings to see which schools are top tier, which are highly competitive, middle tier schools, which are competitive, and low tier schools, which are relatively less competitive, so that you have schools in each zone, ranking zone, that you can apply to. If the top tier schools say no, it is very likely that the middle tier or the low tier schools might say yes. And the important thing, all you need is 1 yes for your PhD applications. If you get 1 yes, that is it, you've won the battle. Yes. So that's what I would say you should do. And as to the number of schools, it depends on you. For me, in my opinion, I think a safe bet is to have at least 7 schools that you are applying to. If you have at least 7 schools, your chances of a year's increase with all the strong material that you add, I think there's a plus for you that you might get in. I hope we've answered your question.
Sure. I appreciate it.
Okay. Nicholas, if you have something to add.
I think you mentioned the most important points. Well, for PhD programs, I could be wrong, but for PhD programs, I think it's much easier finding funded programs, especially in the United States. Even if they do not advertise, they do not categorically state that they have funding, that everyone who is admitted into the program will be fully funded. Most universities and medical centers have research assistantship positions that you can apply for. And these research assistantship positions usually give you enough funding which is kind of equivalent to what you have. For me, for instance, I'm a research assistant with Wayne State University. The only difference is that my research assistantship position is incorporated into the PhD program. So once you apply for admission, you are automatically considered for the research assistantship. You don't have to apply for it separately. So, yeah.
And it's also possible to get a fellowship where you may not have any requirements for that. Automatically you are admitted, and then it comes with a fellowship. And that one, you don't have to work as a research or a teaching assistant in the initials. Maybe later you can do that. However, you may not have any requirement attached to that funding. Like at the University of Rochester, for example, that I got a fellowship on which I am there's no attached research assistantship to it. And that one, it's a free range offer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Uma is asking, how many universities should one apply to boost chances of getting admission at the end of the day? I think I said earlier that, in my opinion, if you have at least 7 schools that you apply to, increase your chances of landing 1 yes, and that is all you might need. Okay. If anyone has extra questions, you can chime in then. Okay. Richard is asking, with the bureaucracy at the US Embassy, is there any document from the admitting school to facilitate your visa acquisition if you get admission, let's say August 2023?
That's a difficult one. I think the US Embassy is very, the universities have very little control over the US Embassy's decision on what dates they make available. What I think can work is if, but it will still be worth a try to inform the university. What the universities can help with would be to probably delay your start dates. So for me, I faced a similar challenge as well. I should have been in Michigan as early as August 2020, but I needed to delay my start by 1 semester because I couldn't get a visa in time, and I was allowed to start in January of 2021. The good thing is now the US Embassy has an emergency appointment option for international students. It's also highly oversubscribed, but it requires a lot of effort. If you keep checking for available dates with time, you would find something, but I know it can be frustrating. I'm not sure if the universities have any specific documents. So yeah.
Yes, and for me, I faced a similar situation during my application. I was supposed to start in August. However, I got my visa date in September. So sorry, the visa interview date in September. So I had to write to my school that this was the situation. The most important thing is to be in touch with your program coordinator, let them know what happens at every stage. So I went for the interview. So I started class online in August, then went for the interview in September. When I actually booked my flight before going for the interview. Then after the interview, I got a yes, and then a few days later, I left and then arrived in, I think, September 15th in Rochester. So the most important thing is just keep your school informed. And fortunately, for most PhD programs, they are flexible. They are quite flexible. So if you are in touch with them, they might just push your start date ahead for you so that you get the chance to do your visa thing. And then there is an email of the embassy so there's an email that you can send messages to. You can just draft a short email to the US Embassy, and sometimes they give generic response. Other times they might give you direct response. I know some people who had some previous exchange visa who did not require going for the F1 visa interview. That interview was waived for them, and then they were able to just come. Some have been able to come before their start date. So it depends on each individual and the school. There's a question. Must you have a specific research project before applying for a PhD position? Does it suffice to just express your interest in the field and in working with the research team?
Yeah, very good question. So I think this is where differences in the country you are applying for the PhD program in comes in. For the US, you don't need to have a specific research project ready. You can have communications with your potential supervisor about what project you think you would want to work on, but you don't need to have a formal research proposal for the US schools. If your interest is to apply for a PhD program in Australia or New Zealand or the United Kingdom, most of the fully funded research programs in those countries are specific projects that you apply to. You don't get admitted into a general program and then you choose a lab. But even that is changing. I know for the United Kingdom, some universities are adopting the American system. They admit you into a program, then you have 2 or 3 laboratory rotations, and then you finally choose a lab. So it depends on which school you're applying to or which country the school is in. Yeah. Yeah, so for the United States, the second part of the question, yes, it will suffice to express interest in the field, but it should be specific to what they do. If you're applying for a physiology PhD program and in the university, the main strengths are cardiovascular, heart failure research and exercise physiology. They don't do anything about stem cells. If you are expressing interest in stem cell research, they may not be able to admit you, not because you are not qualified for a PhD, but simply because they think they won't be able to offer you the guidance that you need to become a good researcher. So it should be specific enough, even if it's just interest.
Yes. So for me, thank you very much, Nicola. For me, an example I can give is University of Cambridge. When I was applying, an aspect they wanted was a research proposal for my application. I was applying to their PhD clinical neuroscience program. I drafted a research proposal. I added it to my application package. They called me for an interview. During the interview, they wanted me to do a presentation on the research I wanted to do. So it varies from school to school. Even for University of Oxford, there are PhD programs. So I'm biased towards neuroscience because that's what I did a lot of the applications to. At the University of Oxford, they have this PhD 1+3, where 1 year is for courses, you get to explore, and then by the end of the year, you decide on which professor you want to work with, and the remaining 3 years you work in their lab. So it depends. It varies from place to place. So most important thing is to get the information from the school website and then work accordingly. I hope we've answered your question as that to your understanding, or maybe there's something extra you want us to elaborate on. Okay, is there an upper hand with a postgrad degree over only an undergraduate degree?
Okay, I can start answering that. So as Mark talked about in the presentation, a lot of the graduate programs and even the top universities, the basic requirement is just an undergraduate degree. if you have a postgrad degree, especially where you did research that is related to the PhD program you are applying to, obviously they will deem your application more favorably, but it's not really required. For me, I had a master's, but the university I'm currently in, Wayne State, they gave me my admission even before I got my admission in my first month of my master. They were not even aware I was doing a master's. So you can still get admission even without a master's. And so, yeah.
The floor is still, thank you very much, Nicholas. The floor is still open for questions. We have, I think, 13 more minutes to go. If you have any questions, you can just chime in. You can send the questions via the chat. And also, if you're not available at this time, you can send an email to mark.osabutey@gmail.com.
Yeah, so we do have we are a much bigger team than, yeah. Farouk, you have a question.
Yeah, good afternoon once again. The fact that for the undergraduate course we do, for example, in UDS where I completed, the fact that we just to work, and usually they keep they say that you should write about your research experience. So usually, to what extent can you explore how do I put it? Yeah, to what extent can you talk to them about your research experience when you actually know that the main research experience you have is the project work you did? Yeah, that's the question.
Okay. Nicholas, can you?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. Yes, so it can be a little challenging for us, right? Because our research projects were mainly public health related, but it's largely depends on how well you communicate. So if the program you're applying for is, let's say, physiology, for instance, I'm not sure if it was the same in UDS, but in KNUST we did, even though we didn't do any top-notch physiology research, we did some experiments like the Starling's law, right? The stretch, we took some gastrocnemius from toads and then stretched it and then looked at the generation, the force that's generated to do the length tension relationship thing. Those are not really research projects that you worked on, but they are things you can talk about in your statement. And with regards to the main project that you did your dissertation in, you should also mention the fact that you learned you can mention things like you learned how to ask, to consider what is happening around you, identify a problem in society, then generate a research question that you want to answer. Based on the question you have, how to develop or come up with a hypothesis. Maybe you had to do some literature review, read around the subject area, the disease condition, come up with a hypothesis, and then you design an experiment, in which case it might just be developing a questionnaire that has the right questions and then going out to collect data. If you're able to describe those, the goal would be to show to the admissions committee that even though you do not have the wet laboratory skills, you went through the process of thinking like a scientist. And that alone is a very strong point. It's a very strong point. It tells them that if given the opportunity, because it's like doing surgery, right? Anyone can be taught to do any procedure. So the most important thing is you learn how to think logically like a scientist, which I believe most medical schools, school research projects give to some extent. And if you describe that way, you wouldn't be lying. If you do have the time, you can try to get yourself involved in some research projects that is related to what you are applying for. And if you are going to say apply by November and you feel you don't have enough time to obtain to have completed a project, you should mention to them that you've identified that you having some wet laboratory skills will be important for your success, and you have taken steps. You've started doing a research internship at so and so facility, and that alone is also good to speak volumes or to improve on your application. So yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah. So there's another question. Can you both share your personal experience of the actual PhD? How demanding or not is it?
Do you want to start, or I should start?
No, you can start.
Okay. My personal experience, it is demanding, but it is also rewarding. So I'm doing my PhD in the physiology program at Wayne State University. My concentration is.
Thank you.
My concentration is in the reproductive sciences, but I am also getting a minor in bioinformatics, which is putting a lot of things on my plate to do. So it has been challenging, but the good thing is it's well structured. In the first 2 years, you take courses in basic medical science areas that are related to your PhD. So I've had to take courses in physiology, the things we learned in medical school, cell biology, and to a large extent, those kind of remind you of the things you would have learned in the past and would have forgotten about. It reminds you of them. But then for me, because we did a lot of those in medical school, it's been much easier for me to understand those compared to someone who did their undergrad in psychology and is now doing a PhD in physiology. So that is one. And then being in a foreign land poses its challenges as well. The homesickness has been a difficult one. I got here in the winter, and in the middle of COVID, school was online. I was stuck in my room. It was stressful, but then I was fortunate enough to join a research lab that is very friendly. The professors here are so friendly. My current PI is well known in his field, and yet he is very humble, and then he keeps an open door policy. Whatever problem I have, I can go into his office anytime and then talk to him, be it personal or academic. So that has been really helpful. When I started doing bioinformatics is also something that is new to me. And so I needed to take some courses that were offered by the computer science department. When I spoke to my physiology department about it, they were more than willing to pay the tuition fee for those classes. And so I would say that these guys, the most important thing is identifying what you want. And then once you get here, help will always be available. If you are struggling with something, it's very likely that there are other PhD students in your class who are also struggling with the same. So don't keep too much to yourself to try to solve everything on your own. You can always ask for help, and it makes the challenges less challenging. So yeah, I hope I shared. I don't know. Yeah, Mark.
Okay, so for me, my PhD experience has been great so far. When I started initially, because I came in late, I felt I was very much behind. So I put in a lot of efforts at the beginning stage of my PhD, because the first 2 years, like Nicola said, the first 2 years are for courses, and then the first year is also for rotations. You get to rotate through 3 or 4 research labs that you like. And then whilst you are rotating, you get to see which research really excites you. Along the way, all my rotation supervisors have been awesome. They've been really great. They've been doing really great research as well. Over here, they are very friendly. If you have things on your mind, things that worry you, you can easily reach out to them, walk into their office, sit down, whether it is academic or personal, they are ready to help. So that's with the academic aspects. When it comes to comfort, I am quite comfortable with the stipend that I receive. I am quite comfortable. Yes, you may not be rich, but you will be comfortable and you're going out, coming in. You won't lack, to say that you won't lack, you will be comfortable. And then extracurricular activities, I'm able to go out to places. The advantage is that if you are in a lab that does not extend their experiments into weekends, you have to be in on weekends so much. It's a plus for you. Your weekends are free. Some days are free for you. You have up to, I think you have at least 10 days off in a year, apart from the public holidays. You have 10 days off that you can at least 10 days off according to the NIH specification. So the experience has been great so far, and I think anyone who is interested will find that it is, like Nicholas will always say, it is rewarding, though there are challenges. So when in the year is it best to begin working on your application, assuming an individual has only now developed interest in pursuing a PhD following this webinar?
So if you do, because most programs begin a year, most programs begin in August, September. It's always, so we are in August now, and the deadline for applications, some schools would continue receiving applications until as late as March, February or March of the year in which you start your program. So if your interest is to apply to such a school, you could actually start working on your applications now. You could start sending emails to, well, first identifying the schools you want to apply to, the programs, and then 2 or 3 professors in the program you are interested in. You start sending emails to them, and then you request for your transcripts from your university, and then start putting down something for the essays. At some point, when you do put down your statements and you have a good final draft ready, I think it would be possible to to get people to have a look over the final draft that you have and make some comments on what to improve or what to change, what to add or take out from it to make it better. So even for those schools that have the deadlines in November, you still have September and October and the first 2 weeks or so in November or December. So you can start working on it now and you would still have a good enough time to get your application in before the deadline so that you get to start your program August next year. Yeah.
So there was a question. How long is the PhD program? And what's the average for a clinician?
So again, US, I think on average, most PhD programs would take 4 to 6 years. 4 to 6 years. But in reality, a lot of them can be completed within 4.5 or 5 years. If you have a master's degree, for instance, that is related to your PhD program, you can transfer credits from your master's towards your PhD, and that can reduce the duration by a year. But I do not know if they transfer credits from medical school, foreign medical schools towards and count that towards your PhD, thereby reducing the duration of your PhD. But it's definitely something you can ask the program coordinator to see if they can make that change. Because if you are going to do physiology and you took classes in physiology in medical school, it will be worth finding out if you can count those towards it. So the short answer would be 4.5 or 5 years. You can complete most of these PhD programs.
So it's important to note that how early you finish your PhD depends on you sometimes. Other times it depends on the kind of research you are doing and the kind of lab you are in. So all these factors play into how long it takes for your PhD for you to finish your PhD. However, the most important thing is the journey. Throughout this PhD journey, you get to learn a lot of things that you thought you didn't have the ability for. Sometimes, so for example, programming isn't something that we were taught in med school. However, when I got here, I had to start learning how to program in MATLAB, how to program in R, and all that. So, and then there are also career centers that are helpful here. You reach out to your career center in your PhD, the school of your PhD program, and they help you know your outlook, your future outlook. You get to see that there's so much apart from academia that you can go into. And there are so many examples of physicians who have done their PhD and gone into different programs. So sometimes what discourages people is, oh, am I going to take this long? If it is your desire to go through that route, don't worry. There's so much in any direction that you can go into. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we don't have any. Uma's hand is raised. Okay, he's asked the question. What's the best time to start contacting professors? I mean, how early? Before admissions open or when it's in progress?
If you can contact them before admissions open, that would be ideal. If you were not able to contact them then and admission is already in progress, you can still contact them and still mention them in your application that you've reached out to this person. And so, yeah, The earlier, the better, always.
All right. So before we move to the last question, I want to just tell everyone, announce that this seminar is being recorded and that it will be available on YouTube. I'm sending the link to the channel on which it will be available. The name of the channel is Dr. Osa. That's my name, Dr. Osa. So after the seminar, we will process the video and then hopefully upload that either today or tomorrow onto the YouTube channel, and then we might share the link to the various platforms. There's the last question. You mentioned that the PhD program is not an escape route, but realistically speaking, assuming one starts the PhD and realizes that he or she loves the research and academia bit more than clinical practice, what are the job prospects after completion, realistically speaking? I think for this one, we can go to the that doctor's pathway chart.
Right.
Yes, the doctor's pathway chart, which is very helpful. I tried spending last night to just draw that chart so that people can see how complex the pathway is for a doctor. Whether you go through the PhD pathway or not, there's so much out there for you. So when you go through the PhD route, you can see from the charts that you can go to industry or entrepreneurship. After your PhD, you can do a postdoc. You can also do a postdoc. And then, so after the postdoc, you can stay in academia. Or you can, from your PhD, straight ahead, get an assistant professorship position, a teaching position, or sometimes even a research position. Other times, from your PhD through residency, after residency, you can move into industry, private practice, or academia. So there are so many routes that you can use. The most important thing is the direction that you think will help you the most, especially if you want to save time, depending on circumstances. You know that you are spoiled for choice when it comes to pathways. I hope this is helpful.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm in a lab of several clinician scientists. Our main principal investigator, he was an MD, did his PhD. When he came to the United States, he actually he wrote to the USMLEs, and then he was doing a postdoctoral fellowship. Then he applied for NIH grants and some other grants. At the time when he was deciding whether to go do residency or stay in academia, he won 3 different grants, research grants. And so he decided that he does enjoy basic biology more than clinical practice. So he decided to stay in basic research. And that's what he's been doing for over 30 years now. There are other clinician scientists in my lab who still see patients about 80% of their time, and then they do 20% research, basic science, molecular biology research. And if you do find that you don't really enjoy basic research, at least you would have acquired some essential skills, and it's still possible to say you don't want to go into research anymore, you want to stay in clinical practice. All that is possible. So getting a PhD doesn't limit you in any way. We do have a poll, right?
Yes.
Can you see my screen? Did you see my screen?
Yeah, oh. I can see your screen. Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to share it, but I'm not sure. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so as we designed a poll that we want to take. It will be very helpful if you can give us if we can get some feedback from you to make to help us make subsequent webinars like this much better. So put a poll up on your screen, and we hope you can reply to them honestly. It's anonymous, so we wouldn't know who gave what answer. So this should have popped up on your screen.
So in any situation that you have a question if you have a question after this, you can send me an email, Osabutey, md@gmail.com. We'll do our best to reply. And then hopefully in the course of the application season, if you have extra questions, you can reach out to us. We'll be ready to help out as much as we can. I have a document that I drafted. It's a draft. It's not complete yet, that I usually share. I give to doctors who are interested in the PhD application pathway. You can always, I'll forward it via I'll forward it now, and then in your free time, you can just read through the document. It will provide you with information about how to go through this PhD application process. It is very helpful, and I think it will make your the application season quite short or easier for you. I will share that in the chat. Okay, this is it in the chat. Okay. All right, so we want to use this opportunity to thank everyone for coming. As I said, along the way, we might organize another session like this, and maybe focus on those who are doing the public health application. We might bring in people who have experience in that pathway, and to provide insight into the application process. We want to thank you once again for giving us the time. We've gone past time. However, we appreciate taking time to join us, discuss the PhD application process and the pathway. And we hope and pray for you guys that the process is easier for you and that you get the yes that you need. We wish you all the best. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.